Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Today, we're talking about bank records and hearsay. Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Pursuant to Section 29 of the Canada Evidence Act, any bank record is admissible in a trial as an exception to the hearsay rule. This means that somebody from a bank doesn't have to come and testify about everything that's in the bank record. The bank record is proof of the contents contained therein without the ability to have to look at whether or not it overcomes the hearsay rule. The problem with this for Mr. Brar was that the bank records that were admitted in his trial also included stills from an ATM that he was said to have used in depositing a fraudulent check. As a result, those stills captured from the video camera on the ATM were considered to be admissible as an exception to the hearsay rule and proof of Mr. Brar's identity in depositing the fraudulent check, even though they weren't a record in the sense of what was really contemplated when the Evidence Act was drafted. Remember that these exceptions to hearsay rules are functioning in a way that is supposed to make things more fair for the prosecution and for the defense, but also to eliminate the need to call unnecessary evidence as to the accuracy of information. But these rules were often drafted at a time where the technology that we have today, technology that could be easily manipulated, technology that doesn't necessarily work the same way that it did 20, 30, 50 years ago, technology that wasn't around then. And so the legislation often doesn't contemplate the realities of where our technological advancements are. So something that was considered a record, for example, digital records in the Evidence Act that would be admissible in court might not necessarily be as reliable as it once was considered to be. The intention behind creating the bank records exception in Section 29 of the Evidence Act was to allow for the admission of financial data related to banks without the need to explain that, on the presumption that banks are going to accurately record financial data because that's literally the entire point of their existence. Not so that banks could admit images that were captured on a video camera that's put in an ATM that's maintained by another individual that's stored on a server that's probably not owned by the bank, but instead owned by some security company that could be accessed, manipulated, and isn't necessarily checked for accuracy as far as date and timestamps on the video footage itself. That's the concern that Mr. Brar was raising at his trial. And this case raises important issues, both about the general need in Canada to completely revisit the provisions of the Offence Act and to make them more in line with the way that modern technology works and interferes with our court system, and also the need to consider what the intention of Parliament was when drafting the provisions of the Evidence Act that allow evidence to be admissible when maybe it wasn't what was in the mind of the drafters, and the need not to give an overly expansive interpretation to the provisions of that act that would maybe facilitate a conviction where one might not be justly founded. These are the issues that the Supreme Court of Canada could have chimed in on. It could have been an opportunity for the Supreme Court of Canada to signal to the government that this legislation needs to be revisited and redrafted. And unfortunately, they missed that opportunity, which means that more cases are going to proceed on the basis of hearsay evidence being admitted under exceptions that weren't contemplated at the time the legislation was drafted, and that is dangerous. Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Cases that should have gone to the Supreme Court of Canada, but didn't. I'm Kyla Lee at Acumen Law Corporation. Thank you to Brazen Bull Creative for putting together these videos. Please like, subscribe, and share with your friends.